is the Diary of a Lady Band Director podcast, brought to you by the Passion Is Network.
Wait a minute. I'm like all the way over here. Hold on. Let me move myself. I'm like close up. Hey, Claire. This setup's kind of weird. Oh my goodness.
Very close up.
Yeah, and Lauren's off camera. All right. We gotta change the setup. Because we look crazy. I'm kind of entertained by it though. I can't change it though. But hi, Claire. It is almost time for HBCU Band Director Consortium. And I thought this would be a good topic. And I know Talk That Talk is going to be in person. I'll be there doing some sessions. And I don't know. I don't know about you, but March has me worn out. What about you? Are you worn out for March? I'm worn out, y'all. I'm worn out. March has marched itself to Marchdom. And I'm even more worn out. And I think it's crazy because I don't have an ensemble of my own. And I have to, that's a sensitive subject. That doesn't mean I'm not in front of an ensemble. It's just that for the first time in my career, the ensemble that I spend most of my time in front of is not my own ensemble. It is an ensemble I am learning in a learning position from, which I haven't been in that position in a long time. For some career goal reasons that, my mama says sometimes you can't tell everybody what you're working on because, they're always, sometimes people talk against you. So this topic is crazy because now I'm on the other side of the fence. I am adjudicating. And never in a million years did I think while I was still a public school teacher, I would be an adjudicator. And so this side is a lot different than the side that I think like you are on and a lot of our other band directors are on, because for me, this side is, I don't know, sometimes you have an opinion about how things go, and then when you're on the opposite side, it gives you a different perspective. But Claire, I'm gonna start with this kind of question, and then I'm gonna see if Lauren can chime in. How is band festival organized in your district? Because the acronyms, if I had listed all the acronyms in the title, this title would have been like 12. It would have been off the screen. There's LPEs, MPAs, band festival, band adjudication, large ensemble assessments, band assessments. I mean, there is a title for the same thing. It is assessment of your ensemble. I know Texas have UILs, which are mostly marching band. And then they also have band assessments. And I have no idea what they call their specific band assessments. But as I've been adjudicating different places, there's a different acronym for everything. And there's a different setup. Even in the state of Maryland, I've been to now 5 districts. And that setup is different. So how is it set up in your district?
Yeah, well, and to speak on Texas real quick, because in grad school, a friend of mine did a presentation, now he's the director at University of Texas, Cliff Crooms, but he did a presentation on UIL, and it's just interesting that also the University of Texas. and so they made that assessment rubric and everything. And now they just all use it. So, because like Prairie View had their own version for a couple of years, but then everybody ended up adopting UIL. And I'm in an interesting spot because I'm in Alabama where, and we call it MPA, we call it Music Performance Assessment. And it's very important. It is, a part of my stipend agreement. So I don't get my band stipend if my group doesn't go, or if we don't take at least one ensemble from our school to that assessment, we don't get our band stipends. So it's very important, a kind of minimum expectation to at least go, even if you're just going to go for comments. You can go for comments only, or you can go for your ratings. And we have 3 onstage judges and 1 sight reading judge. And you sight read at 1 level below whatever you list your band at. And we do have the freedom to choose to register at whatever classification we want to register at. There are, some descriptions, and on the middle school level, it's a little bit more specific. Like you can only register for the lowest classification if you also have first-year players in your ensemble. But other than that, you get to choose, and so you get a little wiggle room. And we do have to pick at least 1 piece from the prescribed music list, which I know we're going to talk about a little bit. But you just have to pick the one, and you can apply for exceptions. And you can also, anybody can nominate music to be added to that list, but they only update that in June of every year. So anyway, it's very important for us to go. But I grew up in Oklahoma where that was not the case at all. So that was kind of new to me when I did my student teaching in Mississippi. They do it very similar to Alabama, that it's really expected that you go, and it depends on the school and the district, but almost everybody goes. And we have that same structure of the onstage part and the sight reading part. But in Oklahoma, it was much more, you decide if you want to go, and it was very optional, and most districts did their own version of it. So like my school district did a festival, but it was not the same as the district level assessment.
And see, even there's variation, just like in some of the things like you were talking about. One in particular, the biggest variation that I've noticed in my adjudicating time has been that list of songs, or whether you have a list or not, and what's on that list. But it seems there's some things like I feel like is general. 1, 3 judges on the floor, sight reading. That's like the standard. That's what I expect when someone asks me, or a district asks me to adjudicate, that there's going to be 3 judges and 1 on the floor. Some districts post-pandemic have opted not to have sight reading, which came with a lot of turmoil. I made a post about that. We had decided, because we know what I do now, not to have sight. And you would have thought in a certain community, in a certain demographic, we had declared World War II. And that, it was kind of telling. The problem is now I'm on the other side. There's only but so much I can say in some things, but just say that we did it. And there are some communities that felt strongly like this was like shifting it in a direction they didn't want it to go. But that's neither here nor there. So let me do my spiel. Gotta do the spiel first, right? So, welcome to Diary of a Lady Band Director, the only woman podcast on the air that talks about everything band and music education, all from the viewpoint of a woman, moi. As usual, we love sharing the stage with our dedicated viewers to gain more insight and encourage dialogue throughout. So if you want to share your insight, mic up. That's what we say. All right. So basic setup, in my experience, has been 3 judges, sight reading, pick something from the list. How many songs you get to pick from the list varies from district to district, state to state. Most of the time, the MEA of your state dictates that list. Is that the same for where you're at, Claire?
Yeah, they the AMEA Association dictates that list. And I know that we've also had some change. I should have mentioned that when I was kind of saying how we structure it. So until I think it was maybe 5 or 7 years ago, not that long ago, they had 2 levels of the assessment. And so you went to your district level assessment in February. And if you got a superior at that festival, then you went on to state, which was in April. So now they combined the 2, and we just have the one that's in March. But the AMEA votes on all of that, and they also vote on the list.
The list is a moment of contention for many. I get in heated fellowship about lists from state to state when I ask questions about state lists. And there's also a lot of, I don't know, there's a little heated fellowship sometimes I see in social media about just music assessments in general. Why should I go? Why shouldn't you go? And it's one of those opinions, like, I know what I benefited out of it. Do I think it's perfect? No. But that some people are vehemently against attending with their group. And there's some people like, if you don't attend, your group ain't sugar honey iced tea. And I don't think I stand on any side of that, because I can see both points. So Lauren, I don't know if you can hear it. Lauren's off camera.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine.
Okay.
How are music assessments? Because you're from Baltimore County, and I'm not from Baltimore County. I'm not even from. So how is it when you were in school?
So it was basically what you both said. It was we had it at it was held at different regions of Baltimore County. So I went to Sunbrook Middle, so we had it at Pikesville High, I believe. And there were 3 judges. We did our 3 pieces, and then we went into the sight reading room. We went to the warm-up room, then we went on the stage, and then we went to the sight reading room. And if we got a superior, we went to states. I don't ever remember going to states, though. I don't know what in Baltimore County, because we were actually one of the better programs in the county, but at least in middle school, we were one of the better programs in the county. While I was in high school, we've gotten like a 1 and a couple of 2s. So we never made it to state in high school, but in middle school, we did well enough to go to states, but I don't even remember doing that. So I don't know if they weren't hosting states that year or what was going on, but I don't ever remember going to states. So, and even, let's see, and we are required to go to assessments. I know my high school went, the high schools in my area, which is, mostly African American population. We were the one program that was thriving. So when it came to another program, that band director, they went, but I don't think they did well. And the other school near us, they didn't really have a program like that, so they didn't go. So in terms of pay, because I know Claire was mentioning how it affected the pay. I don't know how it affected the pay, if at all, for Baltimore County music directors. So yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it.
It's interesting. Like, when I was a kid, I never thought what that day meant for my director. It was all from my selfish perspective, and everybody wants a 1. If you go and y'all have your district has a culture, or your school has a culture of attending, and it's crazy that I know the program that Lauren came from, because it's right down the street from me. It's Milford Mill Academy, and they notoriously had a good concert band and a good marching band. Like, they was never like, from me coming up here, I never heard like one was. I heard more about the marching band, but I never heard like they don't do concert band at all, and that's why they're good. It always seemed like it was kind of some balance. But I never thought about pay until I was a teacher. So for you, Claire, y'all pay is tied into it. Where I came from, where I spent most time, not at all, to the point where principals have autonomy on whether or not you even get to go. And a lot of principals aired on the not, because the structure where I came from is more geared to you do this arts thing to give teachers a break. And that is district wide in some mindsets. Some principals like, yeah, I like this, but not quite the same way as serious as where I came from. Like, I didn't understand that people just didn't go. I didn't understand that people had an option. I didn't even know it was an option. And now I'm back home. I'm back home in Prince George's County, where we just finished up, like, and my school hosts it. So I'm back in the grind again of that, what it looks like. And it looked exactly the same as it did 40 years ago. Like, the standard was still, everyone shows up. You don't get to not come to band assessments. I mean, for the most part, everybody in our region showed up, whether you had 10 kids on stage, and even, I don't even think programs were that small. Like, I think the smallest program I might have seen on stage this week was 25. But the structure is pretty much the same as it was 40 years ago. You show up.
I wanted to say something to that.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I went to PG County's adjudication yesterday, and for me, it was a culture shock in the way that I went to, my middle school was a mixed middle school, and then my high school was a black high school, but we were one high school out of the high school is
You had a baby in the back.
hey, sorry. Yeah, I was like, okay. So we were one high school. There were like three predominantly black high schools in Baltimore County. We're pretty diverse, but we're still separated. So in PG County, mostly black high schools, even private high schools are black. And you have to think it was a big culture shock because all of the high schools came out, and all of them were good. There wasn't a bad group in that mix. There was like maybe one that was like less than par, but otherwise they were all pretty decent. And I'm gonna say this: my favorite was actually Suitland. I loved their warm up. They sounded like a freaking organ, but it was a culture shock to me because this is a black county where everybody is required to come out and play. We don't think of, I guess, black children from an all black county wanting to come out and play willingly. And that's the stigma against us. But all the bands were good. They were up to par. There wasn't, I would say, there wasn't a bad band in the batch. It was just, for me, it was a big culture shock. It wasn't dominated, by the majority. And you had black judges, you had black people running it. Well, actually, no, all types of people were running it. But you had black judges because they wanted their judges to represent the students that were playing on stage. And I just really enjoyed watching PG County's assessment.
Lauren, we've talked about this. Like, and I always struggled with the Baltimore mindset of band, because I came from that and then I came to here and I was like, and it's not, sometimes we get called bougie, and you know what? Sometimes we really are down there, because like, if people don't know, Prince George's County up until this year was the number one holder of black wealth in the nation. Like it's always been like, and I'm not talking like for 5 years, I'm talking 40, 50 years. So you have generational wealth now in a place that it operates quite differently from what we would assume based off of stereotypes and narratives. Like it doesn't operate off of marching band. And that's not saying that marching band is bad. It just, as long as I'm 42 years old, I can't recall it operating any other way other than they're competitive about this thing. Like the kids, I'm listening to the kids, they sound like us when we were kids, like, oh, we gotta get some ones. Oh, Suitland, like my school is saying Suitland's their competition. Suitland's, they're talking about this the same way that people talk about marching band. And so sometimes I always argue, I was like, the marching band culture up here it doesn't thrive because there's something else that really thrives here. And that's not saying that it shouldn't thrive one way or the other. It's just a different culture. And I was glad, Lauren, you got to kind of see it.
Yeah, this is very much, even outside of PG County, Maryland is a concert band state. The only high school I can think about with the marching bands like they had in the South that's not a college band was my high school. So we had that he treated us, my band director treated us like a college band. Like we had a schedule in the fall for marching band, and then in the spring it was all businesses, concert band. He made us go to festival. He also made us go to solo ensemble. So that's that. But see, that's Baltimore County. But there are districts here where they don't. I don't want to say they don't appreciate it. They don't see. Well, that is appreciation, but also more importantly, they don't see the need for band assessments. Like, how does that help them? Basically, how does that help their bottom line? And you really have administrators like that. Well, it doesn't help our bottom line. Or other counties, they're so far out in either like Southern Maryland or on the Eastern Shore that one, they do their own assessments, but then they don't come to states because it's so far away from them, and they don't have the budget to travel because they would have to travel like they're going to another state.
Which is back to that narrative that Maryland, we just jump all around DC to Baltimore. Like, I'm not going down there in that traffic. By the time I get there, it's a whole nother day. But I want to welcome Sheldon Miller, my brother from another mother, because we first
Buenos tacos.
Taco to you.
Buenos.
We met talking about concert band, like somebody from another region, but we had similar mindsets about this thing. So Shelman, how is band assessments structured in Alabama? Huntsville, in particular.
It's changed a little bit. So several years ago, there were two levels. There was district level assessment and then state level assessment. District level, still same model. You play 3 selections. You rated, but at the district level, there was no sight reading. If you earn a superior at the district level, well, then you got to go to the state level. Same thing, but it's supposed to be a little bit tougher, a little bit harder, and that's where sight reading happened. Then at one point, they decided because people would earn superiors at district but wouldn't go to state because that's another set of buses, that's another cost expense, things like that. So they just merged it all into one. So now it's just the state assessment, where the typical play 3 selections with sight reading, and what's interesting with Alabama is currently they're working on changing it now. The classifications that you perform in is letter based currently. So there's AA, single A, double B, single B, so on and so on and so on. And their classification was based on your school population, which if you think about it, that doesn't necessarily work well, Particularly with there's a new school that has 2,000 students, but the band is new. The band may only have 30. Typically, your double A list pieces are your grade 5s and 6s. So if you got a 30-piece band trying to play a grade 6, you might not have an oboe to cover the oboe solo. You may not have 4 French horns. So folks would either not go, or like there was some discrepancy there. So right now we're working on restructuring the music list and the classifications. So now currently you can go at whatever classification you think you will do best in. So regardless of your school population, if you think you can handle playing double A, which is typically with your grade 5 and 6 pieces, then go for it. And if you're at a school with 2,000 plus students, and for whatever reason, like COVID messed people up, you need to go bump down to C, play at whatever rating level you feel you will have the most success. Which is cool. I think the next step for us needs to be, in my opinion, the music classification, because in class C, you'll find grades everything from a 2.5 to a 3.5, almost a 4. But then also double B, which is significantly a higher classification, you can also find grade 2, grade 3, 3.5, 4. Well, so what's the difference? If you can find a grade 4 in the class C and double B, what's the difference between the classes? Which has always confused me. So I think we're now going to a rated the difficulty system as far as the classifications, like the grade of difficulty for your music. So we're trending in what, in my opinion, is a more logical setup. And then we have 8, 9 different districts, I think,
This is confusing
for the whole state of Alabama. So you go wherever is closest to you, but you can perform out of district if you like. Some people do that sometimes it's a schedule thing where it works out better to go out of district. I've had some colleagues that went out of district because they felt that they weren't adjudicated fairly in their home district, but they would go out of district and still get the same, I won't say what rating they got, but they would get the same ratings that they would have gotten if they stayed closer. But that's a whole other discussion.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Welcome to Alabama.
I mean, like, that's a lot. Yeah, and I know places like Texas has like these classifications, like school size. Like, they don't do that here, because school size, I don't know. They don't. I'm trying to figure out the rationale, and maybe y'all can help me. What's the rationale between the school size, though?
I think before things got crazy, the larger the school, typically the larger the band. So you probably have the players to play more challenging music. But that also has a lot of assumption with it.
Mm-hmm.
You're assuming that because the school's large, the band is large. You're assuming that the administration of that larger school sets up the schedule to allow the band to be large. There's a lot of assumptions with that.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like once the socioeconomic impacts of different populations began to infiltrate other schools, they began to have some unique challenges that they weren't used to. And hey, this is a little difficult. What about this? Oh, we've been complaining about that for the longest. Prime example, before I got to my current school, my previous school was Butler High School in Huntsville. I didn't have enough kids to have a fully instrumentated group, if that's a word. So my feeder school, he just got there and he kind of got kids going really, really good. And I heard them play at their winter concert, and I was like, for the winter concert, they sounded really good. I bet if we, if we combine forces, we could probably have a group that we could combine together and go together. So we went as a high school, middle school combined group. I was later told that this was not the case, but I was told that our classification, we had to combine the enrollments of both the high school and the middle school to determine our classification. And I'm like, that cannot be right because it's a middle school. There's no way, no. But I was told that, yeah, so we went, because middle schools are at like class D, which kind of encompasses like a wide range of difficulty. Again, in class D, you can find everything from a grade 2 to a grade 3.5 because there's some middle schools that can handle that in Alabama, depending on your situation. So based on our combined school population, I think we had to go at like double B.
Wait a minute.
B,
okay.
Or something like that. Yeah.
I'm assuming there's a manual for
yes,
all this,
yes.
right? There's like,
yeah.
This is a nightmare to me as a large ensemble chair. Like this whole thing gives me emotional damage.
Yes.
Because
so,
they keep track of all this. They care that much. I don't care that much. I don't care that much. Just bring your kids.
Yeah. But now with us, all three pieces don't have to be off the list. We only have to have one selection off of the list for our classification. The other two can be from anywhere. So that year I did ceremony, chant, and ritual. And the other piece was funny. Ironically, it came up in my Facebook memories. Lydian Lullaby and Recognition March. And
which is why you were able to play Syzygy.
Not that year. Oh God, no.
Shaman be still in music.
But with that, we earned all 2s on stage. We got a 3 in sight reading because I think we were at B, playing at class B. That sight reading had at least 2 key changes, a couple of meter changes, and it was a young group. Like
that was in
this
grade
is
2?
7th and 8th grade and 9th grade, and everyone in my 9th grade, this was pretty much their second year playing in band. So yeah, that's
a lot.
Yeah,
I have to stop you because I don't think I have the mental capacity to understand why you have B, double B, A, twice removed to C.
Yeah.
Pick this off the list, but combine your enrollment. This sounds like a data meeting. Like what? What's the app? No, I'm not gonna ask that. You're gonna send me. Do you have access to this menu? I want to see this for myself.
I thought I sent it to you for something, but yeah.
You may have. I just resend it to me.
Gotcha.
Because whoa. And I hear all these things, and that leads me to this question, this burning question, because God damn it, that is just
why.
Yeah. Thank you for saying it. That's what I needed. Why does it need to be this damn confusing? So I'm gonna put this question in here because this is a good segue. And Lauren, you can kick this off, and then we'll do Claire, then Shelman or some, I don't know. I'm just gonna point to your box and say your name. Here's the question. What are the pros and cons to participating in these assessments? Because in your explanation of Alabama, I would never bring a damn group. I would just be so frustrated at the whole process. I would be like, let me just take my kids to one of these Hershey in the Park Daddies or these music in the park festivals, pay, get on roller coasters after you play, get a trophy or a nah, get the same feedback, have some fun, get hyped up on sugar all day. That's how I see it. So what are the pros and cons to participating in these assessments, district level and state? Because we know there's that district level, and usually district qualifies you for state level if you have that as a setup. Lauren Cohen, what's the pros and cons? Let's start with pros. Okay, let's start with pros.
Okay, and while we're still on the topic of assessment, I just got a text message from a friend. He said he got all superiors for his middle school. Shout out to Dutchtown Middle School in Henry County, Georgia. Got all superiors and everything. Yeah, he just sent me a text message. So the pros of going to assessments, one, your students can see other students, can see other groups, and see what they're up against. One, what they're up against, and two, how they need to sound if the group is better than them. So a lot of times, especially now after the pandemic, band programs, they get so, if they're a concert band program, not a marching band program, they get into their own bubble and they don't see other bands. So that's a good time for them to see other groups. I read something on the Baltimore County website where if you do participate in a festival, your band has to actually sit through 2 other performances. And it's a good way for them to learn, to learn different pieces, see how different schools, how their programs are. So I think that's a big pro. Another pro is, I think, now this is a pro and a con all in one, because it's kind of like really it is low key an assessment on the band director. It's not just an assessment on kids, it's on the band director to see how you're doing. It's an assessment professionally as a music teacher to see what you're doing, the things that you're doing right. Also the things that you're doing that's room for growth, which is not a bad thing. It's just room for growth, and it's an ever learning experience. And I said it's a con too, because there are certain situations that as a band director you cannot help, and that could affect your performance. So I see that as a con as well. It's so many other outside factors that are uncontrollable. So you, as a band director, you just do your best to control what you can, and everything else can fall into place. So yeah, I think a big pro is like having students see other ensembles, and also they get to lead their school trip.
It's a trip. Yeah, right. It's a trip. Claire, what's a pro? What's one of the pros?
I think, it does. The biggest pro is that it gives you feedback, on your program. And, usually the adjudicators have done it for a long, long time. They really know what they're talking about. And so getting that feedback and being able to listen to those judge tapes is really valuable for your program. And I actually just listened to my judge tapes today because we went on Wednesday with my group. And I really like the judges who, expect that you're going to play that for the kids, and they're really talking as if they're talking to the kids instead of talking to the teacher. I think that's really valuable. And it gives your group, one goal to work towards, which I think is valuable just for their personal development, to work towards one goal. And, it is just one moment in time, but that's our lives as musicians, is preparing for that one moment in time to be sure that you can do it on the spot, without any redos. I think giving students across your state, a joint experience is a good thing, where they all go to contests. Like we had one of my French horn players said, oh, well, my cousin was in the band that went right before us, and she texted me and said we did a great job, and it kind of brings everybody together. I think that's a big pro. And like we talked about, being able to listen to other groups is very good for the kids, not just to see what they're up against, but just to see, what other programs are like and get to hear some other music. I think it's good for the directors to get to see what other programs are doing. We don't always see what they're playing, but like, again, Alabama, is maybe a little particular about how we do things, but you can look up what any band has played any year ever. And so that gives you a lot of ideas, to see what people are playing, so that you can add some stuff to your own programs. And it does, hold music educators to a certain standard. I think sometimes we go too far, and we'll talk about the cons, but, it does hold people accountable, to make sure that you're teaching your kids things that, we have agreed upon as music educators are important for your program, important for your students to know when they leave your program, as far as tone quality, rhythmic accuracy, those kinds of objective things. And it also gives you some legitimacy for your program. We consistently try to tell our administrators, this is our state test for band. And yes, we do have a state assessment, and it is just as important as when they're taking the ACAP, our state math and reading tests. And so for some administrators, that goes a long way, knowing that you go to a state assessment and they get to brag on you, if you do well. Our principal hasn't really asked a whole lot about how the program is doing throughout the year, but when he found out that, we got an overall superior, he wanted pictures, he wanted to make a big announcement. So sometimes that can go a long way in advocating for your program, because you have something that has some meat behind it as far as the legitimacy.
What's crazy is the pros, at the end of the day, the kids, they get to see each other, right? They get to see each other and see other people doing what it is they do. Because if you think about it, like I think about it subject wise, there are many English teachers in the building. There are many math teachers in the building. There are many of this subject in the building. There's usually only one of us. And so they can get, I think students can believe that they're the only ones doing it until that day. And then you see hundreds of kids that are doing exactly what they do every day, working towards that same goal of trying to play music well and try to earn the highest possible score. Whether you believe there's validity in the score or not, the kids are now part of a larger group, shared experience, like you were saying. And just the fact that it does hold the teacher, because if you're the only one in the building, there's no one to bounce ideas off of in real time. But in that moment, in that day, you hear new repertoire. You hear a grade 2 that might have been better for your program. Like I like to just listen. I was like, oh, I like that. And I'm writing down this song. I said, oh, this is a good song for my group. And maybe I could program this for my spring concert. And then for me, it's the self-reflection for me as the educator, but also for my students, because sometimes that moment is not about that they did well. I've told you, you need to practice. And now you see another school that has done the work. You can hear they did the work. And remember that day that y'all left your instruments or those weeks in the closet? I told you so. It becomes that validation to what it is you sometimes are trying to get your kids to understand, that they don't understand until they earn a score that is not what they desired, but they didn't put the work in front of it. That's my spiel. Shelman, pro. And then we're going to do a cycle of the cons. And I feel like we can be on cons all day long.
I think a big pro is it takes the kid, taking the kids on that journey from not knowing how the song goes, not being able to get through the first 2 measures, to now they kind of got it memorized and they didn't really know that they had it memorized. and the journey of just the growth from the first day you pass it out until you got on stage. And it's one thing, like I'll tell mine, like their parents love them, so their parents are gonna always tell them that they sound great, because one, they love them and they don't want to crush their hopes and dreams, and two, they really don't, in some cases, don't know what it's supposed to sound like anyway. But here, and I've explained to my group, especially like this year, I had a lot of freshmen that hadn't gone in their feeder school. The judges have the music in front of them, so they know if we're supposed to do a crescendo in measure 9 and you didn't do it, they will know. There's one person that played a note too long when everyone else is playing it short, and they're gonna see, oh nope, that note should be staccato. They're gonna know everything that's supposed to be happening. So there's someone holding them accountable for executing the music right, and that makes them, it kind of makes them execute it and kind of better. So this could kind of spark the marching band debate a little bit. In a marching band competition, the judges don't have scores, so articulation may, unless it's, you know, you can hear when things aren't unified, but if a song is supposed to be played, legato, but as a director you want it to be played more marcato instead, well, as long as everyone's playing it the same on the marching band side, it works because everyone's doing the same thing. However, on a concert band side, you can get into the composer's intent, because now you have 3 other people looking at the score like, hey, we kind of missed this here. So that kind of goes to the directors. So everyone's getting evaluated, not just the kids, but the director as well. And a big pro, it's the most realistic and practical feedback that I will get all year, because the administration, unless you have an administrator that was a band director, as long as the kids aren't tearing the room up and it looks like they're having fun, oh, you're doing a great job. Well, that doesn't really tell me much about what I need to get better at. Like Mr. Vincent Rossi was one of our clinicians out of Stone Mountain, Georgia, and he made a comment that I needed to do more lyrical conducting on our slow piece. I was like, well, I hadn't thought about my own conducting because I'm trying to get the notes and rhythms right. So I know that if I know the way we conduct, the kids will match that, but I had a little mental block. So like that for me was like a huge takeaway just from that. So now going forward, because I'm going to play it again on my spring concert, so we get better and more practical feedback for us as directors. And then also the kids see other students their same age, in some cases similar ability level, doing the same thing. And it could be confirmation that they're doing right, and it can also be like, ooh, they sound fantastic. We don't sound like that, and they're the same size as us. We don't sound like that. Oh, okay. We need to do some work, because we don't sound like that. So a lot of times it lets the kids know. Because I make my kids listen to other groups. I like that. That was a thing where if you attend to perform, you have to listen to 2. That's great.
So Sherman, sorry to interrupt, do y'all have to? Because in Prince George's County, you have to listen to 2 groups.
Nope.
See, that's interesting. So you don't get to just run out the door with your score. You got to sit through that portion. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because I didn't know that wasn't standard practice until I started going places. And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
So your kids just show up, play their music, and run out the door? It's a perfect opportunity for an authentic audience. But go ahead.
Now, here they ask, it's requested that have your students stay to listen, just to have an audience, because a lot of times it happens during the school day, and parents can't always get off to have an audience there. So having your students listen helps create an audience, and it teaches them how to be a good audience member. After we perform, they're happy and excited because we did well, and they went back in while another group was performing, and I got a text message from another director saying that my kids were talking during another group's performance, and I almost lost it in the auditorium. So I sent my message during the band app, said, "Hey, y'all need to shut up." And then once I hit send, I heard shh, shh, and I said, "Don't shush, just shut up."
I just speak. Damn it, you're making noise.
But when we got back, I had to tell them that, hey, the group that was on stage was in the audience when we were on stage, and they gave us all the respect that we wanted and deserved. But when it was their turn to perform and our turn to be the audience, we didn't return that favor. And I talked to them about, hey, that's not okay, because it's being recorded. So you don't want to mess up someone else's recording because you're talking while they're on stage. And from where they were sitting right next to the judges, the same judges that saw us. You can't miss us. We got our marching uniforms with big eagles down the back of the coat. You know who we are. So they weren't disruptive, but it was just noticeable.
It was etiquette.
And had it gotten disruptive, they could have bumped the rating down because of our behavior. So
can I share something, Shelman, if you don't mind? I got the share button. I want everybody to look up at the screen. I think y'all can see this, right? Y'all might not be able to see it, but on the YouTube, let's see, share screen. Am I sharing that screen? Stop, start, go, bam, share. If you can see, it says concert etiquette. It's from our district's website. Mm-hmm. Like our district website has Performance Assessment Festival concert etiquette on their front page right now, because that's how serious they are about concert band. Like, it's etiquette for students and parents, and it explains what festival it is, where does your child go after they perform on stage. Like, when I say this is a well-oiled machine, after sight reading, are they done? It answers all those questions. It explains the rating numbers. Like, it's kind of dope. I don't know if we can see it. I don't know if y'all can see it, but I'm gonna drop the link in the chat. Like, what you said is so much an important part of that process. Is etiquette. We all been to the movies. They understand movie etiquette, but what other place are our kids often going to get, like, what it's like to go to the symphony orchestra and you have to be quiet. You can't be on your phone the whole time. Like, you should have to look engaged. We have adults that don't get that. One thing I really like about being home now is how serious they take music education. Like, they do it. There's always the bottom line. They want the school principals want their band to be out front, but that's not the only line. They actually respect, like, it makes better, well-rounded people. And so you won't have a principal that says, no, you can't go. I had years of that. I had years of a principal like, what does this got to do with me? Now y'all can't go. We've had times where we had a bus on backup and we sat in concert attire in a chair waiting to see if I could go, like the day of, and having to explain to kids, y'all work this hard, but we might not be able to go in. And there's been at least a year or two where the principal's like, no, we don't have coverage for you. But you know
for
this
us
for
in Alabama, we changed it from concert festival, because festival sounds like fun. So when principals hear, no, I have an assessment, oh, it sounds more important. Like festival sounds like a fun trip. Like, no, we don't know no fun trips. Like, no, it's not a fun trip. So then they changed it to district assessment or performance assessment to make it sound more formal, because we have admin that do stuff like that.
So yeah, I wanted people to see that, like, this might be a good idea for some other districts, for real. Like, make sure people know that it's serious. So we got the cons. We see the armchair band directors on social media, and some not armchair, some are really solid band directors. I'm not even gonna say that everybody's an armchair band director. Some are very solid, who vehemently are against taking their kids, putting time, energy, whatever on this thing. And I'm gonna throw this to you, Claire. Cons.
Well, I'll start by saying everybody I know or have heard of that is against it, almost always, it's just like a personal issue they have with their state organization or their district organization. And, and not saying that they're in the wrong sometimes when they have those issues. But that seems to be, the case most of the time when they're against those assessments. It's something happened, with a personal experience with one or two people. But there are still, I think some legitimate cons. I think especially in Alabama and maybe particularly in my district, there's just so much pressure on the directors, especially if you come from one of those programs that is used to getting straight superiors every year. If you don't get straight superiors, it is just a travesty. And, people are afraid that they're going to get pink slipped, if they don't get straight superiors. And I don't think that it should really be taken that seriously, because it's for people's opinion of your program at one point in time. It usually they're right about a whole lot of things, but sometimes it goes too far with the pressure. And then next, bias. I think that they are inherently biased. I think that we do a lot to get rid of that. Like when, my group just went, we did have a diverse panel of judges. We had 2 women, we had a Black director that was on the panel. And I think that more and more we are making efforts to have a diverse panel of judges. I think that helps. But one thing that we don't do very well in Alabama is typically the directors or the adjudicators are people who are from this area. And so they know almost everybody that they're adjudicating for. And so I think to get rid of some bias, having people from out of state and from, different areas would help with that. And, a lot of people believe that different districts are harder or easier to get, certain ratings in. And part of that is just natural. If you've just listened to collegiate level ensembles all morning, and then you have a middle school come in that is, doing really well with what they have, but it's a small group, they don't have full instrumentation, that's just going to sound very different to your ears compared to what you just heard versus if you were hearing kind of middle of the road groups all morning. So there's going to be some bias in what you receive from your judges. Sometimes there are some unrealistic aspects of your performance that we're expected to adapt to for MPA that are just not really a part of being a musician on a regular basis. Like one thing that a lot of people get dinged for balance. And the reality is you're not allowed to play more than a couple notes on the stage before, you have to play your program. And most of the time it's a stage that you may have never played on before. And there's certain things that we can't hear as a director from right in front of the ensemble. Like you can't hear that in that particular venue, your trumpets stick out, but out in the audience, people can hear that. And so your kids are getting assessed on stuff that they couldn't have possibly prepared for. And so there's some unrealistic aspects of MPA that I think, it would be a con. So those are the main cons that I see. And then, of course, there have just been so much bias against certain programs, particularly Black programs. And there's kind of some negative connotations there that I think it's just going to take a long time to get past. And it's perfectly natural for people to feel that way. And it's better in some areas and worse in some other areas. And sometimes just those personal aspects and the people who stick around in those organizations a long time can have some negative effects on how effective that assessment is, and are people really interested in participating in your area or not?
Bias is the one that I think stands out the most. And then there's like the racial bias, and there's this socioeconomic bias for me, because I came from one of the poor districts, and now I'm in the most affluent. Like, I've gone from complete sides of the spectrum, and there's certainly things that I just know I couldn't get done. And that was part of me leaving. And it was a hard pill to swallow, that I can't be the kid who's getting lessons from the president's zone. Like, I can't out-teach. There isn't enough clock hours in a day. And all of my lunch times and all of my after school and before school. And this kid has someone coming every day to the building who plays with the president's zone. Like, and they have 3 hours of ensemble a day at my school. 3 hours. Where I came from, 45 minutes. Those kids tested into that program. These kids are last names L through Z. We're just apples to oranges. That's a con for me, because when they get on stage, no one sees that report card of inequities. They just see kids, and you could dress them up all day long. You could put a bow tie on, you could get Oxford shirts and tuxedo pants. But at the end of the day, I know that my kids have an uphill battle. And depending on the adjudicator, which is why I take this very seriously now. I know I put the adjudicator, it just sounds official. I'm very careful of what I put on that paper, and not to put something down that can't be fixed outside of a socioeconomic area. Like, this is something that can be fixed. Your posture can be fixed. Your air support can be fixed. That crappy horn that I'm looking at, we can't do nothing about that. But we can maximize whatever it is that you, the person, are doing as you approach the instrument. So I'm very careful, because I know judges can destroy a program. And especially judges who come from, like you said, outside the state, or come from somewhere else. They don't know, and sometimes they don't care. I don't approach this like I don't care about the bodies on the stage. They showed up. So we do on-stage clinics now. It's starting to be a widespread thing in Maryland, thank God. Because that puts the proof in the adjudicator too. You got to get up there, and in 5 minutes, if you set it on the paper, see if you can fix it in 5 minutes. That's a test. And I got a standing ovation, my first. So I felt kind of good. I said, oh, I do know what I'm talking about, because I did come from somewhere where I would see comments like, but I can't even address that. The pads were falling off of this clarinet as we were walking on the stage. I can't address that. The timpani gauges are slipping. I can't address that. I can't address, some of these things, but I try to approach what I can address. But some judges, that's my con. Some judges have forgotten what it was like to be a kid on that stage, especially the ones after the pandemic for the first time. So I try not to be that judge, but we know there's some judges like, you didn't say anything that was constructive. And if you I feel like at the end of the day, it's not kids' fault. At the end of the day, that might have to be something you have a conversation, email to the director, and offer support, not critique, like offer support. That's my spiel. Lauren, cons to these state assessments, if you think there are any.
Well, I touched a bit about how it assesses the music director, the band director, the choir director, the orchestra director on things that they cannot control. So that was the whole discussion on the economic background. Adjudicated a group of students who can get private lessons versus students who can't even consider, they have to choose between buying or reading or eating. So yeah, let's start there. Another thing I wanted to touch on was even with how great they sounded yesterday, I think I feel some type of way about wanting to require these schools who did well to adjudicate, these predominantly African American schools to adjudicate. And I know I'm jumping the gun on questions, but if they did so well, why did they make all state? And you want to be in a position to judge them and say, oh, you're doing this, you're doing that wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're doing it, you're not just doing this right. But to the students that are doing well, to that population that's doing well, you don't want to bring that talent to the forefront with the rest of the state. And that's something I take issue with. They work hard, not just in the band room and on their pieces with the band, but they also participate in solo ensemble. They do recitals. They take lessons. And what is put out, what you display as the state for all state band is not truly representative of the state. I think that's a big con, especially for band directors. I know it's disheartening the band directors that they work so hard with their students, and their students who do well can't make it on, or don't make it on that level, despite that they got a superior in their assessments. I think it shouldn't be just about the assessment, but celebrating the individual students and the individual programs. I don't know how to say it, but I think I just said it. Don't require these schools to come to assessments if you won't take their students for the honor bands. And I'll leave it at that.
I plead the fifth. 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth. That led to, you just pushed us into that question, didn't you, Lauren? Shelman, one con to assessments, a state level or district level.
One con, and this is just realistic, is there is a financial aspect. That if you're in a tight school, that Title I school, one of my feeders, his principal told him he couldn't charge band fees. Well, basically he couldn't call it a band fee. But his first year teacher, so he didn't realize, oh, you just got to change what you call it. The fair share, or it's not a band fee. This is the cost of the band shirt. So it's just paying for their band shirt. And you kind of inflate the cost a little bit to cover other stuff. But he'll be good for next year. But for us, it's I want to say $50 for the registration plus $1 or $2 per student. So that's about, that can go up to almost $80 to $100 just to go. Then at least in my district, we don't have buses that just, we just call. We got to pay for our buses for everything. So that bus is going to be at least $175. If you have the bus go and stay until you come back, it's going to be more. So there's a financial cost in it. Let's say you were in t-shirts and stuff, for the fall for marching band. If you don't have uniforms, now you have to get something presentable to wear. So like there can be some financial costs that are involved that have nothing to do with the music. Oh, then you got to buy the music, and then you have to buy the extra scores and all that. So for those places where it's cash strapped, that can be a very legitimate financial burden that may be difficult to overcome. So yeah, that could be one con. But I want to, before I go on, whether you have a pro or a con, your view on that directly relates to your philosophy, your teaching philosophy. If you feel that, well, how can some judges that don't know my kids tell me how to teach? But that's not, well, but from my philosophy, that's not really the point of it. It's not to teach you how to teach. The same way you can walk into a restaurant one day out of the year and be like, I don't think they cleaned their ice machine because I got stuff floating in my water. Well, you only went one day out of 365 that is open, but based on looking at the water in your glass and the spots on your spoon and fork, you're going to assess this is not a clean establishment. I'm not coming back here. Like that happens in lots of other aspects in life. So depends on how you take it. Now, if you're the restaurant owner, sometimes it's a gut check that, yeah, you might need to check yourself on some stuff. My first time going to MPA, it was my first year teaching. So the kids, I wasn't the previous director, so I was getting that backlash. So my mind, well, we're probably gonna get threes because they're not listening, they're not practicing. It's them. And then I listened to the judge's tape and I said, ooh, yikes, I told them to do that. Oh, it sounds like your kids are doing this. They shouldn't do that. Oh, dang. I told them to do that. Ooh. I told them to do that too. Man, okay. Yikes. And you as a director, you gotta be vulnerable to that criticism of someone that knows what they're talking about. And that's outside, that's not picking the right song. That's me got to tighten up on my pedagogy. And I had to just crack open them books, talk to some people, kind of had to go a few times, get my head busted to the white meat. And it's a growing thing. And it's a con, but I'm kind of shifting back to the pros. It trains your ear as a director as far as what sound you want your group to make. For those of us that are, marching band fanatics, if we're the marching band sound that we have in our ear that can be great on the field is not the same sound that you want on stage. And people say, well, the marching band is that concert band outside. Yes, to an extent. But however, there are some aspects of marching band that you don't want your concert band to sound like, you don't want your marching band to sound exactly like. There's some approaches that have to shift a little bit. The approach has to change a little bit to play outside. The forte outside is not the same forte on stage.
Can I tag into that, Sheldon?
Yeah.
Marching band by design is geared sound production to brass because the amount of decay that's going to happen you outside. So you do want a directional instrument versus something that's omnipresent like woodwinds, because you lose so much sound by just being outside. To me, my personal opinion, that gets flipped when you are in concert band. And some people say, well, why? Why does it get flipped? It gets flipped because a lot of the technical weight shifts when you're in concert band to woodwind. So if you are approaching your concert band, your marching band, your concert band like marching band by design of what the focal instrumentation is, how the music is written, it is not written to, woodwinds are not just there for color, if you will. We say that for marching band, right? That's the common thing. Woodwinds are here to add color, but in concert band, woodwinds are here to carry weight. And if the weight, you just think about, I think about, and there's diversity in music and in how things are arranged, and we have new composers writing differently, but you want to hear that run on the inside. You want to hear that woodwinds get fly. You want to hear those things. And those things are not, that sound concept is not going to showcase those things that that ensemble was intended to showcase in the first place. If your concept, your sound concept is the same. And I know, like, some people say, well, who defines the sound concepts? I'll put it like this. We know when we watch a drama, there's certain characteristics we're looking for in how that script was written. We know that when we watch a comedy, there's certain characteristics we're looking for in a comedy. Dramas and comedies are not written the same way. Marching band and concert band are not written the same way. I think we need to stop I think we're lying to ourselves when we say that they are the same. They're just not. If I want to watch a movie that's going to make me laugh, I'm looking for comedians to star in that movie. I'm not looking for someone who is one of those those deep actors. Like, we're not looking for that in Tom Hanks. Even though Tom Hanks can be funny, we know that we're going to get some real depth to the acting when a comedy is just about the punchline. Marching band, the punchline is brass produced a sound that could survive outside, and woodwinds are adding to it. Just the same as concert band, brass are often supporting woodwinds, and there are some times where that's not the case. But we all know that if you are a clarinet player and you started out on clarinet in concert band, you know you had to know how to do some technical that the trumpets could not do yet. You know, if you're a flute player, that flute part, that tuba part, they didn't look the same. Rarely, Shelman, and you can attest. Shelman, your function is bass, to hold down the figure bass, the bass line of the song. And if you do get the melody, that is just to showcase that you can do it. But the function is not for clarinets to be playing the bass line. So I think we lie to ourselves when we try to put those two together. And it's okay to say that they're different. It's okay to say that the focal points and the purpose or the intent behind the drama versus the comedy is different.
Yeah. Different doesn't mean better or worse.
It doesn't. It doesn't. So no, Malik is not brass slander. It's just acknowledging that it's just different. That's just what it is to me. You know, people can, you know, come in my DM and argue with me and tell me that I'm stupid and whatever. It ain't gonna go well with my husband, but you might want to try. I gotta drop this question there because this is gonna come up because this is part of that con that I hear. Is the scoring biased against diverse ensembles? You can take the word diverse however you want it. Repertoire. You can take diverse as in a tangible thing, as in our races and our skin color or ethnicities. Is the scoring that we receive sometimes as diverse ensembles or ensembles, is it biased or can it be? Shelman.
As a young director, I kind of thought it was, to be honest. And that was really just me needing to grow within myself. A sound concept is a sound concept, period. It kind of also kind of goes to the bias in the adjudicator as well a little bit, because it's one of those things. You can't really prove it. If it is there, you can't really prove it. Because I've had a colleague that would say, well, they're not going to give me ones because I'm me. They might give you ones because you got some diversity in your group, and I got offended. I said no. And I didn't say it to him because it's going to fall on deaf ears, but he's not going to get ones because he doesn't tune his group, and he picks music poorly for his group. I earned mine. So
pew pew pew.
Yeah. But I think if anything, if there isn't a bias, it's more so the preference of that particular judge. Because I've had judges say they would like to hear more of two different things. I've had a judge that would say brass is a little heavy here, and then another judge at the same performance say, hey, I could use a little bit more brass in this spot. Now, from that comment, did I get a hit, positive or negative, in my scoring? I don't know, because that it was just that moment. I don't know. I won't say it's not. I will say it's definitely possible. But again, like I said earlier, it kind of goes to what your philosophy is. My personal mindset is I'm going to make my group so good that that doesn't matter. A good sound is a good sound. Being in tune is being in tune, no matter what. Having good balance is having good balance, period. So if we're just executing like we're supposed to, everything else will take care of itself. And the next part is, if I know that I prepared my group as best as I can, I don't really care what the rating is. So it may be a racist or biased adjudicator. I don't care, because I know we worked our behinds off and we're leaving the stage with no regrets. So they can be biased or whatever. I don't really care about the rating. Let's go to the mall and hang out because we worked hard. And then before you do that, also I kind of check and see, okay, we have that one judge that's like, man, this judge 2 is killing people. But if that judge is consistent and that judge is nitpicking about balance on everybody, well, that's the judge that's sitting to the far right, and that's where the timpani are, and that's where all the tubas tend to sit. So that judge is nailing everyone on that particular aspect, and they're consistent. Well, then they're being fair. They're being equally tough to everybody. I don't really have any grounds to be upset or like, well, I think that group sounded better than we did, and he chopped into pieces too. Oh, okay. That's just the Simon Cowell of the judge panel today. And it is what it is. So I just move on. I've gotten it's taken a while for me to get to the point where I stopped caring about the rating. And when I stopped caring about the rating so much and focus on the growth of the kids and in my own professional growth, that's when the superiors started to happen. So it goes back to what is your purpose in going?
That you keep saying this education philosophy, which is, I think that's what it's really exposing to me. when we say something's biased, because sometimes it really goes against our educational philosophy, and that is what's actually getting bruised a little bit. And someone just said this is why you should be active in your region and voting for judges, because if everybody's getting nailed by that judge, and this is coming from someone on the other side, it is your right, you know, when the festival is done, to talk to your coordinator, the music coordinator, finance coordinator, district, whatever, VPA program director, whatever, to say, hey, we have noticed this trend. Everybody has gotten a 1. When it comes to this judge, it's a 3. There's no uniformity in the judging, and we feel that this might be a little more exposing that maybe the judge that we have is not the right fit for our district. It's kind of like that principle: if all your kids in your class are failing, the problem isn't the kids, the problem is you. And I think that is a good moment where, like someone said, voting and paying, you know, dues, whether you feel like it or not, you know, money moves things. Money moves things. Money makes decisions. And when your money doesn't, then your social media and your all those things move things, you know. And I'm not saying that, you know, some of these things just need to be taken to a new level, but the first level is, you know, unification and common ground. If everybody's getting nailed by one judge, then it might be time to have that conversation as a collective. Hey, this doesn't make our kids feel good, and doesn't make us feel good, not because we don't want to improve, but because some of these things are maybe seemingly rooted in a bias that should not be on this paper. And that's real. And someone said that was in Texas. So the question is the scoring bias against diverse ensembles? Lauren, you there?
While we wait on Lauren, I think also with Alabama a few years ago, we went from just a sheet to an actual rubric. And that scoring rubric helps quantify those things better. And I think it helps. I won't say take away, apply. How do you try to apply bias? Because you can have it, but now you got to justify it based on the rubric, and that can get hard to do if you just hell bent on, I'm just not going to do this for this group. Well, okay, you cannot do it for that group, but you got to justify that on paper. And it's hard to say, okay, judge 1 and 2, this group got 4s and 5s. And judge 3 is given 2s and 3s. Okay, there's a discrepancy here. Now hold up. We got to have a conversation now. So I think the rubric and it also helps us on the teacher end. Okay, because this is what I did. I took all my scores from the previous 4 or 5 years, and I noticed my lowest score was in tone and intonation. I said, okay, I need to be more proactive and more targeting on developing my tone and intonation with my group. So I had to start that in band camp. And in band camp, all right, we're doing John McAllister's warm up every day from day 1 band camp, long tones, lip slurs, all that. And constantly reminding my kids, hey, was that the best sound you can make? Like being really, really intentional in that. And I got that from it's data. So I'm like, okay, all my lowest scores is this. So let me target these areas. And when I target those areas, everything else gets better because the blend and balance gets better because everyone's in tune, got a good tone, all that good stuff. Yeah. All right. I'm tired. I didn't mean to take Lauren's time.
No. I think she's kind of out in the world, and she probably struggle with signals. We kind of, even though we live in Baltimore, we live like in what, I don't know what people think Baltimore look like sometimes. There's deer and gophers in my backyard on a regular. And no, I'm serious. Like we have fox, deers, gophers, rabbits, and people here to where Baltimore. It's really a town that industrial revolution turned into a city, like most things, but it still has a lot of town-like qualities, including a state park that I drive through every day. So I hear a lot about Texas. I hear a lot about like these bigger states in places where ban is a big deal. I feel like I hear more bias from those places than smaller areas. And I come from a small town. So I feel like sometimes in a small town, you know everybody. So it's kind of harder to dish rag somebody you gonna see at the store. You know what I mean? Like you're gonna see like a lot of composers live in Maryland. Mark Lortz lives in Maryland. Brian Baumages was like 10 minutes down the street from my school. It's just we have like a state of composers. Like for such a small state, you could literally call up at least 5 or 10 people you see on this state list and have them come in your band room. So it's kind of hard to have some of that bias. When we talk about diversity in ensembles, I think sometimes when it comes to marching band or even jazz band for that matter, I think what happens is those sound concepts are just not the same as each other. Just not. A big band doesn't have the same sound concept. And we do get into these arguments over sound concepts, but I think we get in these arguments in sound concepts in ensembles that have different sound concepts in general. And I just think we try to hybrid a lot of it, and it doesn't work. I will say this. As a woman, I went to Women Band Director International, who brother, aka Malcolm, but one of my good brothers, Mark Martin, he joined it. But we had a session talking about things we see on adjudicator sheets. It's bias. They talk about our dress. What that got to do with the whole notes and half notes my kids play? And when I say dress, we're not talking about dress as far as like being distracting and something revealing. We just in general get talked about our dress. And I don't think men get talked about their dress. Maybe the standard is most people go and wear a suit. But I've heard, and we talked about this, comments where they say, oh, well, you should wear like a show dress, when that's not what they feel comfortable in. Or you should wear something with sleeves or whatever. There's a lot of bias we see sometimes that has nothing to do with our kids' sound. Like we see comments about attire, I think 2 to 1. I know a lot of directors who have seen comments about their attire, from wearing heels on the podium to not wearing heels to open toe shoes. Like if you really down that bad that you find my toes attractive and distracting to what my students are playing, you're the wrong adjudicator. Because you just need to go find another place where you can have your little foot fetish to yourself. But we get comments that are completely something you should never see on an adjudicator sheet. And I'd be remiss and not use my platform to say to the gentleman delegation, we get comments from our earrings. Now, listen, I'm gonna wear these. I'm gonna wear them. They're black. I'm gonna wear jewelry on the podium. I'm going to try not to be distracting, but I am gonna bring me to the podium. And I don't think it's as taboo for men to bring them to the podium as it is women. Like even Mary Aesop, who's the director of the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra. She was the first woman for decades and the only woman for decades. She, I think Leonard Bernstein or somebody, some big time conductor or composer said that they just didn't like the way it looked for her to be on the podium. She was too aggressive and her gestures were not becoming of a woman, so to speak. Like, but the men get to flap their arms around and look like they pulling down a plane, but I supposed to be like this? Like I'm conjuring a spell? No. So I just wanted to make sure I said that they will put comments about our attire. And I had an all-girl band, so you know what I did? I hit the Janelle Monáe on them, and we had bow ties and cummerbunds and tuxedo pants. We looked like, they was like, oh, here come them little red bow ties, because I didn't want anything to be said about their skirt length or their legs, or that some of them are wearing heels and they think that is, too much to see on the stage. So I just spent the money and got tuxedo shirts and tuxedo pants and bow ties and said, we all gonna look just like this, uniform and the same. Bias in scoring. Claire, you ever had some comments that was just like, what?
Yeah. I mean, like I said earlier, I think it's just inherently biased. And like Shelman said, that's more to do with, I think, the individual preferences of the judge. And there's just not a lot to do to get rid of that, just to be conscious of it is a start. And I'm in Alabama too. And so we have, a very specific rubric. And so I think that does help a lot, because you have to justify, according to that rubric, why you gave the score in the comments that you did. So that's very helpful. But yeah, I mean, I've gotten conflicting comments, from judges on the same moment of the performance. There was a moment in a piece that we played on Wednesday that it calls for a triple F and it has an accent, and I wanted a little bit of edge in the sound, and it's just a low brass. And so they really played out on that. And, one judge said, well, that's too loud. And then another judge said, nice, like that's exactly what it called for. And, going back to bias, the judge that, really liked that came from an HBCU background, and the judge that said, well, that's too loud, came from a different background. And so I think our biases come from, what we're exposed to and what we're used to, and that kind of molds our preferences. So if you're not having a diverse panel of judges in, multiple ways, not just in race, but in gender and in different areas of your state, with different musical preferences, then you are going to be biased towards certain programs. And I kind of touched on some other things that I think affect it, of just like being in the district that you're in. If you are one of the very few programs that's really small, there's judges are going to be a little bit biased against you just naturally, because they've just heard all of these, 60 and 70 piece groups all day. And then you come on stage with your 15 kids and, it's hard to reset your ears. And so I think that, whatever the minority situation is, whether that's the size of your group or the instrumentation or, your sound preferences, I think there's going to be some inherent bias towards whatever that minority opinion or situation is.
Whew, this is getting interesting, because each question is getting more and more into the fire. And I have to make this disclaimer. This question, I knew I wasn't going to be able to answer. And, some people might be, oh, you fake. I can't answer it, because what I say as a state representative becomes what the state said. And even with my own podcast, there is an edit button. And not because I'm afraid of the conversation, more so that when I have those conversations, there has to be some type of action behind it. And that action doesn't happen just because I said so. I'm not a party of my own. So that's my disclaimer. Somebody was like, oh, well, why you got a podcast if you ain't? Because I'm not messy. And I like long-lasting change. And sometimes what you say can prevent long-lasting change. That's my disclaimer. All right. So here go the question. And Shelman, it's going to come to you. Is the representation diverse concerning honor bands in your area?
No. It's not. Biggest thing is so for our honor bands are based off of all state auditions, and to be honest, really, I think in any state, if you don't take private lessons, it's really difficult, if not impossible, to make all state. I've only had one person that has made all state. They transferred from a school of the arts in Toledo, Ohio. So it wasn't really anything that I did. She came down that in the fall as a new student, I think she was a junior, and she just asked, hey, she found the all state stuff on her own. That's how driven she was. So it wasn't anything that I did. She had private lessons when she was in Ohio. Found the solo, she made blue band. So in Alabama, there's a red, white, and blue band, and then there's a middle school band. But yeah, and is that like a bias in the audition process? No, it's more of an equity or lack of equity in resource issue, where like it's just me at my school, so I have a percussion person that volunteers that helps out, but he's not there on an everyday basis to show my percussionists how to play the 4 mallet piece on the solo. I don't have a brass coordinator and a woodwind coordinator that can just take my woodwinds off to the side and just work on the all-state audition stuff. I kind of have to do that myself within my class, but even that is more of a general thing. The families that have the disposable income to be able to afford a weekly lesson on top of the band fees and everything else that child wants to do, they are able to afford the private lessons, even if it's not every week, if it's just once a month, and they dollar up and do a group with some. Yeah, it's more of a, I think it's more of a equity of financial resource thing than a conspiracy theory thing. Like, nope, we met our quota for this particular group. That's it. We're not letting any more in, because all of our all-star auditions are blind. So even if someone tried to, there's no way to do that. However, the kid can't get to the audition if they don't have access to the material, or they don't have, they can learn, you can learn the scales, but some of the like, for example, percussion wise, it's, I don't see how anybody makes it. It's the snare drum solo this year was in 5/8 out of the Mitchell Peters advanced percussion book. It was in 5/8. The timpani solo was out of the Pedal to the Kettle book. It was in 6/8, went to 9/8. Used all 4 drums. That the timpani solo was like doable. Like, it's okay, tough, but like doable. The mallet solo was a 4 mallet solo. There is nothing that I play on a routine basis in my band program that requires any of my mallets to play 4 mallets. So I had one percussionist that tried out. I had to kind of show him how to hold 2 mallets in one hand just to kind of sort of try it. But yeah, it's now, of course, there were some African, the group itself had all kinds of races and colors and all that, because Huntsville as a whole, North Alabama, is rather diverse from a social economic standpoint and all that. So there are Black families at those schools that have those extra resources, so they made it. So from that standpoint, yes. But as far as like, if you take a cross section of every school in the district, no, there was not representation in the district honor band from every school, because every school doesn't have kids that make it. And I think that's more, I believe that's more of an equity issue, equity and resource issue, than a covert plot to keep marginalized folks from making all state.
I think that's honest and real. You know, when it comes to, like, okay, so I'm gonna talk from the perspective I can absolutely talk about where I work. I work at the Northern Visual Performing Arts School of a very large district. Prince George's County is like the largest county of Black people in America. Well, we're now second, because where my family lives, like 2 seconds from where my husband's from, is now number 1. But the proximity, they're like this. I mean, if you look at a map and you don't know anything about the area, you say, oh, that is where the rich Black people live now. And out of the top 10 places for Black wealth, 6 of those cities are in Maryland. In America, 6. And those 6 are all in those 2 counties. So when we talk about resources, the resources in my county looks a lot different than the resources in another all Black county in another state. It just does. They don't even have free before care in a school. They tried it down there, and my parents still live down there. They tried it down there, but nobody made the baseline income to qualify. So no kids benefited from having that aftercare. So those kids can take lessons because their parents can afford lessons. Like, they can afford lessons. They can afford to leave their job because they may own their own business, and they can take them to and fro these type of competitions and all those other things. And then our proximity to DC is very close. And DC is very arts rich. It's the nation's capital, and it's very arts rich. So I'm going to say the majority of the private instructors on staff at my public school, let me say that, they're on staff, are from the president's own. The school is 98% Latinx. Those kids are getting lessons from the president's own. That kid plays completely different from a kid somewhere else. And it's not even, those kids look diverse. They are diverse by every definition. And some of them come from places where they're not full, the school is still the majority free and reduced lunch, ironically, but the district is rich, if that makes sense. So you cannot have a lot of money, but go to this public school, test in, audition, get free lessons your entire time. I teach 4 different levels of theory in high school. My students are part writing right now, juniors. There's no comparison to outside of just good old-fashioned work ethic. And when you find that kid is going to make it through anything. I was that type of kid that, come hell or high water, I was going to practice way more than everybody. I made all state. But on staff at my public school, most of them are retired military, the top tier military bands in DC. They're either retired or still active, or they just recently retired. And they're there every day. They pull kids out every day of the week for 30 minutes during school time for in-school lessons. They have band for 90 minutes every other day, and then every day after school, another 90 minutes. Those kids get 3 hours of band, choir, orchestra every day. I don't post a lot of things that happen in that school. I don't post moments where I am on the podium. See, people, I refuse to, because it will make some people who want to sometimes claim that there's no inequity will look at this. No. We are an outlier. We're an outlier. We have so many things working, and this is a district ran program. So that money is never going to stop. The support, we just got a contrabass clarinet, a buffet contrabass clarinet. I promise you that clarinet costs more than my car. My car is sitting in the band office, literally. And some kid don't have to pay for it. They're going to play it. Every group at my school got ones, straight ones across the floor. Orchestra, I was going to post theirs because theirs was just magnificent. I just have to post theirs. It's just good. But when we talk about equity, we don't talk about money, but we do know that money is directly related to access to money and access to generational wealth. And then that does implicate race, because that's what that's what systemic racism has done in our country. Is it's the access. It's the access for me. So I don't think it is inherently like some boogeyman saying, let's just take these. It's the whole system. And I struggle in my position. Yeah, we're always hiring. My supervisor literally was like, Krystal, bring them to me. He's a Black man. And everybody in charge looks like me. So it's a very unique situation where the upper hand is in historically the hands of the people who you would never think have the upper hand. I'm never moving. I'm not moving to Texas. I'm not moving to Alabama. I'm never moving, because I know that I live in a place of unicorns and fairy tales. And I
would
know
not even insult you to get you to
I'm
move
never
out here.
moving. I'm never moving. I'm not leaving.
In fact, when I retire, I might move up there. And yeah, I got 4 more years.
Come on. The doors are open. Listen, let me tell you about how the folks are silently migrating up here. Silently. They ain't saying that they'd be like, man, band in the South is great. And then I'm like, you went to Cookman. You went to Southern. You now live down the street from me. Okay. But I just wanted to say that inequity exists. And I don't personally think it's right for me to put that as an achievement on my timeline, because that is a collective. It's a village creating a product that might not be feasible without a lot of extra strife and hard work and grunt for them to achieve. I will post stuff from where I came from and say those were last names L through Z, and we could get 2s and 1s at assessments. Because to me, that is more reflective of what a lot of people have to do versus what I do now every day, which is a place of fairy tales, dreams, and unicorns. There's my spiel. We gotta move on. Are the state lists outdated for modern day music education? I'm just telling you right now, Maryland's isn't. But you know why? We just talked about why. We play what we want. We get who we want on that list. Syzygy. We got composers that are down the street. All that stuff on the list. Brian Baumages, that's on the list. Why? Down the street. How y'all feel about them lists? Where?
I think it's getting better overall, because over the last 3 years, I've just seen so much attention brought to it. So I do think it is getting better, but it depends on the state. And I think in many states, like in Alabama, the process is just kind of tied up in people who are a state organization, have this meeting, uh, really, where not stuff to be put on the list. So it's, in theory, anybody can nominate anything. But
Claire, you
and
coming in and out. I don't know if you got switched to Wi-Fi. Make sure whatever you're on. Sometimes if you jump on Wi-Fi, you are on Wi-Fi. It might have your signal look like it is like on and popping now though.
Okay. All right. So, and to sum up what I was saying, I think it's getting better. I think the thing that we could do to make it better for everybody is to just make it easier to nominate things on the list. And I would go so far to say we have to add at least 5 new pieces every year. Because we just have, at least on our list, we have so much that is just very dated. And now that we do have so many diverse composers who are composing music that would be an excellent list, we need to make sure that we're adding those things. So I think the idea to require music is added every year instead of just an option for those who have the time to dedicate to making that happen.
Quick follow-up question, Claire. As far as your state list, how does music, what's the process of how music gets on that list? And you and Shelman are in the same state. How does music get selected? How it stays, how it goes, how it gets rated, all those things, if you know.
Yeah, and I only know a little bit. So Shelman may know more about it. I know that, our state organization is over that, and they have a meeting every year in July where you can, if you've submitted something over the past year, it gets brought up in that meeting. And so you have to submit, but I think you have to submit a score of the music too. And so it has to be somebody who has the resources to buy music on a regular basis that, may or may not get approved. And you submit that, and then the committee votes on, whether it gets approved or not. I don't really know too much beyond that. I don't know how they determine, which lists it goes.
The spirit of Quan has hit us. If those of you don't know, Quan is my good brother from Texas, and his Wi-Fi always strikes. And I feel like that spirit, that devil, that Wi-Fi devil just came to attack us. I'm going to text my brother and say, Quan, your Wi-Fi demon has hit us yet again. Claire, you had the floor. We back.
Okay. And I don't know where I got cut off. But basically they vote on it every year. And you can submit things, but it is up to the state level organization. And Shelman may know more about the details of that because he's been teaching in Alabama longer than I have.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. One summer I'm gonna actually go down. So we have a summer convention on the beach, Orange Beach, Gulf Shores, every summer. That's where they, if there's, I want to say this amendments to our policy and our constitution comes up, it gets talked about then. With the music selection, there's a whole thing where, so the process is with the score, if there's a digital version, for example, with some pieces now, they have a YouTube link, and the YouTube link goes to the score during the recording. That will work. So they need either the score and a recording, and then they listen to it and whoever's down there during that summer on that music selection committee, I've never heard of anything that got suggested to get added to the list that never got added. I think the biggest thing would be where it gets added, and I think it'll be really interesting this summer as they're looking to restructure the list, period, because they're trying to change up the whole classification thing that we have going on. That doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So if that changes within the music selection, the music classification will also have to change too, which is interesting because, for example, a grade, like the difficulty grades aren't universal across states. Like a grade 2 in Georgia might be a 2.5 in Alabama, and it might be a 3 in Florida, which is, even though it might say 2.5 on the publication, which is weird. But I think one summer I've kind of vowed to myself, one summer I'm gonna go down and chill on the beach and shrimp and crab legs and listen to band music, but it won't be this summer.
It's okay. It's okay. Well, one, I'm coming down there.
Yes.
With you and Reggie. And I promise you, we're going to do some of those things. We're going to listen to some music and all that stuff. But
for sure.
We're going to have fun. Because God damn it,
yes,
that's what we do. So I'm coming down there for work, but this is kind of like work fun.
Yeah.
But so I wanted to talk a little bit about this because we have some people listening. And if you are listening, please hit that like button. If you're still here, you just got here, you know, just sitting around in the background, passively listening, stop what you're doing, because I'm about to ruin the stop. Okay, I'm not a rapper. But anyway, hit that like button, share it on your timeline, because this is information that I think a lot of people need to know. So most states have a review committee. A lot of people don't know how to that it exists, and a lot of people don't know that there are review times for that list where you can give suggestions. I've never not gotten something on the list that I wanted to get on that list. And most of the time, a lot of times what I've gotten on the list is because it sounds a lot different than what I've heard on the list. Syzygy being one of them. That was my yes, Syzygy. I want it. That comes with being involved in your state organization. However you feel about it, they make decisions about what it is that you do. And I don't like, that's taxation. What's that? Taxation without representation. Part of the reason why I got involved with my state organization is because I am the educator that would be like, this ain't fair. We are never playing this. We can't play host. We're not. Why is it host? And why don't we have Kate and Sherma on our list? Why don't we have any women on our list? Like, if you're that person, one, I put a resource in the chat. Composer Diversity Initiative or project. Rob Deemer is very accessible on social media. It was, he helps run that, organize that list, and it's broken down to, we're not just talking black and white. We are talking across the board diversity. And if you're feeling squirrely this summer and you want to have some listening parties or whatever, that list is a good go-to to find out, what's out there that may not be on your list. And I would admonish you to make suggestions. And if it's something that you and a few directors like, everybody make the same suggestion, it has strength and validity. If 4 directors are saying this song is a great song, not because, it's by a woman, but it's strong. It's a strong piece for students to learn how to play. to get information out of it, aligns with state standards or whatever. So I would admonish people to get involved with that process, because I do hear a lot of people say, I ain't playing none of that list. I don't like concert band music. I said, you don't listen to enough music. Because I'm telling you, Scissor G sexy. I'm telling you that kids love Brian Baumages. Chasing Sunlight. I was so glad to hear that song programmed at festival this year. I did it 6 years ago, and it was something that I got added because I was like, it's just a strong piece of music. And the composer's diverse and they're alive. I always say, there are a lot of living composers that aren't getting enough shine. So, and that's our job. That's our job to give them that shine.
Also, I want to add, in the whole picking music, some of it is we got to know the rules for our state, because I knew a person, he's retired now. He never played anything on the list. He always wanted to play something new that no one had heard before. So if it just came out like that summer and nobody played it, he's putting it on his program for MPA, and he would apply to have it added to the list. So he knew the time frame when to get it. So what it is in Alabama, if you want a song, permission to add a song to the list for MPA has to be put in by like September, October. And then a committee looks at it, reviews it. You got to send in a score and a recording. And then they'll send you a letter that says you've been approved to play this on class, blah, 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 blah. And that's it. So, and then like I said earlier with Alabama, only one of our songs has to be off of our list. The other two can be from whatever, as long as they're published. And then I want to say they may not have to be published. I haven't gone down that rabbit hole, but if you're an arranger and you wanted to create your own march, write it out, have it. The scores have to be bound. I know that much for the judges. You can't just have a staple and a whole bunch of sheets of paper. But like there's ways to, when you know the system, pimp the system. Learn how to pimp the system. Like a lot of the so-called top band programs they'll go to MPA and play 2 levels down from what they could play just to be safe, and claim, we got all superiors. Well, because your group is capable to play a 5-6 program, but you went and played a grade 3 program. But they know the system. So yeah, learn the system and pimp it. Because that's what our counterparts do. From the tax code to everything else. So learn the system and pimp the system.
I wish I had a Cash App, button. I would send this man some Cash App because he just told y'all that this man just gave y'all spit some knowledge. Like, you're not so restricted. A lot of places are not restricted by that list as much as people say it is. Let's just be honest, call a spade a spade. Some of y'all just lazy. It's so much easier to complain about it than to try to make change about it. Now, you try and then nothing happens, then you know what? Free reign, complain all day long, pick it, get on social media, have your soapbox. But some of y'all just lazy. When people say, I don't play this white people music, I'm like, oh, here we go. You don't know no history. And, I have some white friends that are great composers too. We're not doing that either. Some of it is just that you don't know repertoire. And that's okay.
That part.
You just don't know repertoire. And it's okay. I'm not a rap guru. There's a good brother that I found out he teaches at a KIPP school and he teaches hip hop. So if I ever teach a general music class again and I'm going through genres, that is who I'm going to tap into, because this brother has the knowledge and the information. But what grinds my gears sometimes about this argument with repertoire is that when you challenge them to say why, they start to negate themselves, and they don't even know it, but they're too prideful to even acknowledge that you just don't really know. And it's okay. The male delegation, y'all can do that a lot when it comes to this band thing. I'm just gonna say it. It's my podcast. I can say it. I want to say it. Some of y'all get in y'all feelings about something. I was like, I'm sorry, you did not have a really good experience with somebody who was knowledgeable enough to be able to engage you with something that would have been relevant to things that you know culturally. Because concert band is the ensemble type. It is not the genre of music. Does that make sense? Concert music is just music you play sitting down in concert with each other. It is not. You'll be all right, Malik. You know you my good brother. You'll be all right. It's just sitting in concert with each other, playing music that has been scored and arranged. And I can't even say scored a certain type, because that's all changing with the Ayati Shabazes and the Kataji Copleys, and it's changing with Marie Douglas's, and we're not even programming their music. So are we hypocrites? Because Big City Lights is about riding in a car through your big city with your friends on a night out. That has culture to it. And I just don't want to hear that the music ain't out there. We got all these people breaking barriers, and we just letting them break down the wall by themselves as we sit behind the rubble complaining. Like, I don't like that, because they're fighting some battles that some of us don't have the balls to fight. We arrange, but we won't dare put it on paper and submit it to ASCAP. I'm done. That was my tabernacle. Sorry. That was my violence for today. The state list can be modern, and there's some differences in states. I know. I got the last question tonight. It's 8:44. I haven't started my unwind yet. I will have my wine down. See what I did there. Last question. What things would you like to see added, subtracted, or improved with the district music assessments? What's some things that you would like to see, whether it's your own or just in general? Claire?
Well, the first thing I wanted to say is I'm in a school district that I'm fortunate enough that they will pay for our buses to go to MP, because it is required. And or like add that, you have to add an app. They'll only pay the cost of school buses.
There go your
my back.
Yeah,
okay,
there you go.
And so they'll only pay for the school buses. So like if you have to take charter buses, then they'll only pay for, however much it would have cost to take school buses. But I think that more districts need to do that. That would go a long way towards equity and ensuring that, if the director is willing to take a group, that they can go. So that's something that I think we need to start advocating for, and that more districts, because a lot of our schools don't have money. A lot of our band programs don't have money, but it's 9 times out of 10, the district has a lot of money that's laying around that they could be putting to better use, to the actual teachers and students to be able to use for some valuable things. So that's something I'd like to see that's not necessarily related to the assessment, but in schools and districts, taking that more seriously and supporting their programs in those endeavors. I'd like to see just more programs go. because I think that goes towards, preventing bias in the judging. If you're seeing a lot of small groups, then that becomes the norm. And if that's the reality of what your area is like, then your assessment should look like that. You should have a lot of small groups on stage. And I would like to see more groups that are afraid to just go for comments. Because, most of the time you can do that. If you don't want those ratings attached to your name, a lot of states, they publish those and it's attached to your name as a director forever. But go for comments because it's still going to be really valuable for your group. And when we talked about the honor bands and, do they represent our populations or not? I think one thing that I wish more districts did their own honor band, because like our school district's honor band is a lot more diverse than our all-state band, of course. And so that gives those students an opportunity because, like we said, it's not a conspiracy against keeping lower income students out of all-state bands. But, realistically, if they're not getting private lessons every day and a bunch of other kids are, then it's going to be more difficult for them to make that group. Having more opportunities, period, levels of, leave a long way. And allowing schools to bring a bus of kids to those auditions would go a long way. And sometimes that's fine to do, and sometimes directors are discouraged from doing that. So I think we should definitely encourage that, and maybe even offer that. If you know that you're a supervisor in a district that has a lot of low-income students that are not going to have the transportation to be able to make those auditions, then organize something so that you can provide that transportation to give them an opportunity.
It's the word opportunity for me. Just increase it. And everything don't have to be jumping through fire, like just jumping through hoops that are on fire with gasoline on your underwear. Talk about don't get burnt. Shelman, something that you would like to see added, taken away, or changed about band assessments?
For Alabama particularly, and like I said earlier, we're working on it, restructuring the classification and a better what's the word? A better correlation between the classification and the grade level of the music that we play. Also, I like to add the on-stage clinic part to the junior. I think that would be a great thing to add. I know that's money because that's another adjudicator, or it could just be one of the three that's already out there. But I think that if not that, there was one, I want to say, I can't remember what the group was. But it's one of those, it's an outside festival type thing. But one of the judges watches you as the conductor, and their comments are strictly on conducting. And like, I think that would be a good direction to go to add in just the whole evaluation process. And it maybe the stage clinic portion, that if there's one judge that's assigned to that they also kind of address the conducting of the conductor. Now, this particular festival, however, this judge sat on stage so that they could see the conductor from the student perspective versus from the audience. I think that would be neat.
Yo, I like that. I'm writing these down, by the way. Like, so I'm writing that down specifically. I really like that because that is a big part of how students are responding, is that sometimes directors don't know that their gestures are not, and I'm guilty of it all the time, are not quite giving what the students need. So I I'm gonna tell y'all, if I can change the world from my little corner, we got rid of sight reading on the state level this year, and we encouraged all 26 of our districts to make a decision that was most fitting to what they needed as a district. In a lot of districts, they kept sight reading, but it did not get added into their score to qualify for states. I think that is what we call equity. We're not taking away the skill. The skill is important to be developed. But if my kids started in January, which like a lot of times I had students who rotated out in the semester, and so the whole band was new in January, but I'm ballsy and I'm going to take them anyway, even though they only know 6 notes. Yeah, I'm going to take that group, but they can't sight read their way out of paper brown bag because they don't even know their instrument yet. I just thought that's one of those things I've always personally felt against. Like I do a lot of things from my shoes, and when I felt like it was just unfair to me and my students as a person, but I still know that the skill is important. So we replaced it with on-stage clinics. Here's how it works for us. I, the adjudicator, I am responsible for writing down those comments and speaking in the microphone comments at the same time simultaneously in a timely fashion because I'm getting paid to do that. And then on a rotation, so every judge has to do it. It just rotates over and over again. And then I have to get on that stage with the score that I just got 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, and be able to address some of those things that I put down on that comment sheet. It validates the F out of me. Because now I have to get in front of a cold room of students who don't know me and a director who may feel some kind of way when they read these comments. But if I can't get a result or a change in these key things, then I shouldn't be judging you. So I think that would kind of get rid of some of the, judges that say it but can't do it, if you will, or they always had a grade 6 ensemble, but they've never taught beginners. So I think if I can encourage anybody listening, on stage clinics, push for it. Push for judges to do it.
Does that happen immediately after the performance on stage?
Oh, yeah.
So, but in front of the audience that's also there listening, you're giving your clinic on the spot in the moment.
Yep.
Oh, that sounds like tons of fun.
Oh, I love it though. It was fun. Yeah. But I'm gonna tell you, if the group does have some technical issues, you have to really think about now there's an audience watching you. You can't come out sideways out your mouth about these babies on stage. You've got to still be encouraging. You still got
because the mama in the audience.
Yeah. And I promise you, this blonde hair that showed up to the district I just left last week, and it wasn't a lot of me in there. And they gave me a standing ovation because they can hear the change. Like, oh, and I did share with the director, like on my comments, I put my email address. Like, we could just talk shop. Like, this day is just one moment, like you said, Claire, right? We could talk shop. And then maybe in that comment, you're going to say, I have 5 kids who are on the spectrum in this group. And they're just going to play, and that's okay. But I like the on-stage clinic. I think it's definitely more beneficial than you leaving with these comments that you yourself might not really know how to fix yourself. That's my spiel. And it all happens in less than 15 minutes. And it works. If you want to contact somebody who got it down, her name is Kimberly Hirschman. She is the fine arts coordinator in Frederick County, Maryland. And we were done by 1:00 every day with on-stage clinics. Finito, from 9:00 to 1:00. It was over several days, but we were done by 1:00. So it didn't even extend. You just had to be really thorough with what it is that you were going to do as an adjudicator. And she handpicked people who had been in the classroom more recently than not, or still in the classroom like me. This was a good chat. I think there's a lot to be said about, where this needs to go as far as diversity, equity, and inclusion. Absolutely. But I've seen more superior ratings on my timeline than I ever have after the pandemic. And that means that directors are really working hard and really pushing their kids. And I saw some people who weren't happy with their scores. And, I can tell where their heart was based on how they responded to those scores. Some egos were hurt. And some people's like, my kids still did a good job. And we got some work to do, or some things that, I got to work on. And that's being transparent. That's what the process is supposed to be about. I want to thank y'all for coming on. March has been the longest year of my life. I am on my 5th district, and I will be finished the month with one more over 2 days. And then I'm going straight to the HBCU consortium, literally like 3 days later. So I'm tired. I thought not having my own group was going to be easier. It's worse. It's worse. It's so much worse.
You went out and got like everybody else's group.
Yeah, like Pokemon. They get a little piece of your group, a little piece of your group. And then I still got UMBC. And we're programming talk about diversity. We're programming Black Panther. I arranged it by Kendrick Lamar. My former students from middle school who are now adults are going to rap at a state university, an arrangement by a Black person, by a Black artist, about a Black superhero, by Black students. And it's gonna be dope, but it's driving me nuts because the percussion, that's all I'm gonna say. Like everybody, the percussion. So that's what I'm doing. And when we premiere it, we'll put it, I'll have some video, hopefully, about how this project I've been working on. So I just let a cat out the bag. That is what I've been doing, and it's driving me nuts. So
just throw in a couple of djembes and the go-go's in there, and you'll be all right.
We do, but I got big vision. We'll talk offline. My brain is braining too much. And I don't know. We're gonna pull it off. We're gonna pull it off with my vision, because I have to say it out loud to make it happen. Yeah. But that's what I'm doing. Black Panther, Kendrick Lamar, concert band, former students who are now taller than me and have beards. And they were in the 6th grade when I taught them. So I'm out. With that being said, it's 8:59 on the dot. 9 o'clock was my goal. Thank you for coming. Thank you for tuning in. Diary of a Lady Band Director. Hit the like button on your way out. Hit the share button. Hit the subscribe button to the Passion Is Network. Thankful to the guy behind the scenes, Jay, Julian, Luke. He's just super dope. And thank y'all for listening. We out, all that good stuff.